Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You know how we do it here. We sift through all that dense research, look at the different takes, and basically give you the core insights you need to be genuinely up to speed.
And today, our mission, well, it centers on someone whose ideas often get pretty misunderstood. Confucius. For ages, his philosophy has been painted as, rigid, static, or even just a tool for control, the old label of imperial study, Duangxu.
Yeah, that label sticks.
Yeah.
But the sources we're digging into today argue this, fundamentally missing the mark. We're looking at an analysis of the Analects, specifically that argues the heart of Confucian ethics, this Ren-based system. It's actually incredibly dynamic, like an engine for moral growth.
Exactly. It's not about arriving at some fixed point. It's always a process. And the key idea, the linchpin holding this dynamic view together, is this concept called Ti-Yong Yi-Ru.
Okay, Ti-Yong Yi-Ru. Sounds profound, but maybe a bit abstract. How does that actually work? What does it mean?
Well, it roughly translates to substance and function are one. Think of it as non-dualistic. Imagine, say, you're designing a building. The the substance, that's like the blueprint, the core architectural idea, the ideal.
Okay, the plan.
Right. And the yang, the function, that's the actual building process, the materials, the activity, the manifestation of that blueprint in the real world.
And the Yi-Ru part are one means you can't really separate them. The blueprint needs the building needs the blueprint.
Precisely. They have to exist together in this kind of constant unified flow. And it's that unity that makes the whole ethical system, which the source calls dynamic ethics, a living, adaptable thing.
Interesting. So it's designed not to be static.
That's the argument. And we're going to break down how this works using three core mechanisms the source identifies: centralization, decentralization, and then how you resolve the tension between them, which is called De-paradoxization.
All right. Let's start with the problem itself. Why the static feet? What's that famous quote that always gets used as like exhibit A for rigidity?
Ah, yeah. It's the one that sounds super hierarchical. Ruler acts as ruler, minister as minister, father as father, son as son. You know the one.
Right. Sounds pretty fixed.
And if you read it in isolation, yeah, it sounds like Confucius is just saying, know your place, stick to your role, don't rock the boat.
Which feeds directly into that imperial study idea.
Yeah.
Just a simple rule book for keeping order.
That's the classic misreading, according to this analysis. It fails because it ignores this whole Ti-Yong dynamic framework we just mentioned. Confucius wasn't just describing a fixed social ladder. He was outlining an ethical ideal for how those roles should function when aiming for that unity of Ti and Yang.
Okay, so let's nail down Ti and Yang a bit more. They seem really central.
Absolutely fundamental. So Ti, that's the internal root, the substance, the essence. It's the ideal you're aiming for but haven't necessarily manifested yet. Philosophically, you might call it inner sageliness, Nisheng. It's about who you aspire to be.
Got it. Inner ideal.
Right.
And Yang, Y-O-N-G.
That's the external side, the function, the doing, the practical application in the world. That's the outer kingship, Wei Wing. It's what you actually do.
And crucially, they define each other.
Exactly. The source stresses their relative concepts. You can't really grasp the ideal Ti without the action Yang, and your actions, your Yang, are kind of directionless without the guidance of the Ti. The whole ethical game is this constant striving to bring them into seamless unity, Ti-Yong Yi-Ru.
Okay, so it's this constant balancing act. How do you stop it from tipping too far one way or the other, like all abstract thinking or just robotic rule following? What keeps it dynamic and well-balanced?
Great question. That brings us to the first corrective mechanism. Let's talk about centralization.
Centralization sounds like focusing. Bring things to the center.
In a way, yes. It's the dynamic move that pulls you back when you're getting maybe too lost in the Ti. Too much on your head, too much theory, and redirects you towards Yang, towards concrete action, practical reality, fulfilling your role right now.
Ah, okay. So if you're just navel-gazing about the meaning of goodness.
Centralization says, okay, enough pondering. Go do something good. Go perform the function. Confucius really hammers this point home in the Analects.
Like those quotes about actions speaking louder than words.
Exactly. Telling Zigong, act first on your words and afterwards follow them. Or praising the gentleman who desires to be slow in speech but quick in action. It's this insistence that your inner substance, your Ti, has to be demonstrated through your outer function, your Yang.
The source had that interesting example of Confucius himself in the Grand Temple. He knew all the rituals, but he kept asking questions. Why?
Right. It's a perfect illustration of centralization. He wasn't there as the host or the ultimate authority, Sutu. His role in that specific context was guest. gay.
Oh, okay.
So his ethical duty at that moment wasn't about showing off his deep knowledge, his tea. It was about properly performing the function, the yang, expected of a guest in that situation. Asking questions was the correct ritual behavior for his role.
So it's about aligning your actions with your actual current situation and role, not just some abstract ideal of who you are or what you know.
Precisely. It's why he warns against, say, sacrificing to spirits that aren't your own, that's flattery, acting outside your proper relational sphere, or not being in that position, do not plan for that government. Centralization keeps you grounded in your actual responsibilities.
Okay, that makes sense as a way to combat getting lost in theory. But what about the opposite problem? What if you become too focused on just doing on the external actions, the yang, just going through the motions?
That's where the second principle kicks in as the counterbalance. Decentralization.
Decentralization, so moving away from the center, in a sense.
Exactly. It's the corrective pull away from being overly absorbed in external actions or affairs, Yang, and directs you back towards the internal essence, the deeper understanding, the Ti. It's like switching from doing mode back to reflecting mode.
This sounds like the search for Ren, for that core humaneness, the internal quality.
Yes, very much so. And this is where Confucius gets really personal. When he says things like, is Ren far away? If I desire Ren, then Ren arrives. He's saying the source of virtue is internal. It's up to you. It's about self-effort. You practice Ren for yourself, fundamentally.
Does this explain why he gave different answers when different students asked him, what is Ren? That always seemed a bit confusing.
It's actually a prime example of decentralization in action, according to this view. He wasn't giving a fixed definition. He was tailoring his guidance based on where that particular student was at externally, their yang, to push them back towards their needed internal development, their Ti.
So for Fan Shi, maybe he saw a lack of outward care, so he says love others. Action-oriented.
Right. But for Yuan, perhaps someone very diligent in practice, but maybe needing deeper self-reflection, he says, overcoming oneself and returning to propriety. Much more internal focus.
So the different answers aren't contradictions. They're customized course corrections back to the Ti.
Exactly. Back to the root. And this internal journey, this decentralization, requires understanding the Wei, the Tao, and crucially acting with Xin, which is usually translated as sincerity or trustworthiness.
Sincerity. Xin.
Yeah, the source really highlights Xin as fundamental. It's like the bedrock. If you're not genuinely sincere with yourself and in your dealings with others, then your external actions, your yang, will inevitably be out of sync with your internal ideal, your Ti. The whole dynamic falls apart without that sincerity.
Okay, so we have these two forces. Centralization pushing us towards action and role, Yang, and decentralization pulling us back to reflection and essence.
Role.
But you mentioned they create tension, even paradoxes. How does that work?
Well, think about it. 1 minute, the situation might demand you focus intensely on fulfilling your duties, Centralization. The next minute, maybe you realize you're just going through the motions and you need to step back and reconnect with the why, decentralization.
Right, they seem like opposites.
They often are in practice.
Mm-hmm.
And that inherent tension, that feeling of contradiction or paradox, the source uses the term Dao Yi Xing. That's not a flaw in the system. That is the system working. It's the friction that forces growth.
So the paradox itself is productive.
Absolutely. Think of Zilu. When he felt inadequate, maybe he needed a push towards action centralization. But when he got boastful, saying something like, I wish to inflict nothing on others that I wouldn't want myself, maybe Confucius sensed he needed a dose of humility, a check on his internal state decentralization. The correction needed is always dynamic.
Okay, so the constant process of noticing these tensions and trying to resolve them, to find the right balance for that moment, that's the third principle.
That's de-paradoxization. It's the ongoing work of navigating and resolving these apparent contradictions between Ti-Yong, between inner and outer, between reflection and action. It's the engine driving moral development.
Well, how do you actually do that? What's the method for resolving these paradoxes? Is there a guide?
Confucius offered one. He told his disciple Zhengzi, my way is unified by one single thread that runs through it all. That single thread is the key to de-paradoxization.
One thread. What did Zhengzi figure out it was?
Zhengzi's interpretation is famous. The way of the master is nothing more than loyalty, zong, and reciprocity, shu.
Zong and shu. Loyalty and reciprocity.
Yeah.
How do they resolve the paradox?
Think about it. Zhang, loyalty, is primarily about being true to oneself, conscientious, committed internally. That relates strongly to the Ti, the inner substance, the ideal.
Okay, faithfulness to your own core principles.
Right. And shu, reciprocity, often translated as forgiveness or empathy, don't do to others what you wouldn't want done to you. That's about how you relate externally, how you apply your principles in interaction. That clearly connects to the yang, the function, the action in the world.
Ah, I see. So Zong anchors the internal, Ti, and Shu guides the external, Yang. Together, they provide a way to act authentically and appropriately, bridging the potential gap.
Precisely. It's the synthesis. It stops you from being just inwardly focused and ignoring others, or just outwardly compliant and losing your own core. It's the practical tool for achieving Ti-Yong Yi-Ru.
And is there, like, an ultimate mindset for this? A way to maintain this dynamic balance without constantly feeling torn?
The source points to a state of mind Confucius embodied, characterized by 4 famous negatives. It's about shedding certain attachments.
The 4 no's.
That's them. No prejudice, no insistence, no obstinacy, no ego. Or woo-yi, woo-be, woo-goo, woo-wo.
No prejudice, no insistence, no obstinacy, no ego. How does that help?
Well, if you let go of preconceived notions, yi, rigid insistence on things being a certain way by stubbornness, gu, and a fixed sense of self or ego, well, you become much more flexible.
You stop forcing reality to fit your blueprint.
Exactly. You stop insisting your Ti, the ideal, must look exactly like you planned, and you stop letting your current yang, your actions or role, completely define who you are. You gain the mental freedom needed for Ti and Yang to flow together dynamically without your own rigidity getting in the way.
Wow. Okay, so taken all together, the Ti-Yong framework, centralization, decentralization, and resolving the paradoxes through Zong and Shu, aiming for those 4 negatives. It really paints a picture of Confucian ethics as anything but static.
That's the core argument. It's a system designed for constant adjustment, self-correction, and growth. It's fundamentally dynamic and adaptable, which makes the old rigid imperial study label seem, well, completely inadequate.
So the big takeaway for us, for the listener, is that this Ren-based ethics isn't a set of fixed rules, but more like a continuous loop.
A dynamic loop, yeah. Driven by navigating the tension between your inner ideals and your outer actions. It demands ongoing moral effort, constantly balancing reflection, ET, and practice, Yang. It's designed to evolve, which is why, the source argues, it remains relevant across different times and cultures.
If it's all about this ongoing journey, this dynamic process, where does one start? How do you kick off this cycle and keep it moving?
Well, the source brings it right back to the very beginning of the Analects, that famous opening line. To study and constantly practice it, is it not pleasant? Study
and practice.
Right. The starting point and the ongoing process is engaging in both. You need the learning, the reflection, connecting to Ti, and you need the constant application, the practice, the doing, connecting to Yang. That interplay, that necessary and yes, pleasant friction between learning and doing that is the dynamic ethical life in miniature.
So knowledge without action is incomplete, and action without reflection is directionless. The pleasantness comes from engaging in that constant back and forth.
That's the idea. It's a journey without a final destination, in a sense. Which leads to maybe a final thought for you, the listener.
Yeah.
Think about your own life. What's your centralization practice? What ensures you actually put your values into action? And what's your decentralization? What makes you step back and reflect on why you're doing what you're doing, on your core principles? Consciously engaging both, that's where this dynamic ethical life really begins.